tell me a little bit more about, you know, the idea of FOMO in revenue marketing, because I think that's what we're all kind of leading up to in terms of, okay, fear of missing out, understand that. How do you think that plays into marketing, in particular revenue marketing? Maybe tell us, like at the beginning, what you think of the difference between just great marketing and revenue marketing to start out with.
Yeah, well, I'm going to use the funnel to frame the conversation, right? And so, and I mentioned that I work with startup companies, and so often we talk about the TAM, or the total addressable market. And the total addressable market shouldn't necessarily be your target audience, right? And so whenever I'm starting to work with a client, one of the first things I ask are who's your target audience? And no doubt I get the, oh yeah, we know exactly who it is. And then they list out like 5 to 10 different target audiences. And so when I talk about FOMO of revenue, it's that niching down and really focusing on one, maybe two audiences if there's a lot of similarities. That especially for startup companies, it's so important to channel your efforts into focusing and niching down and not being worried about taking any and all revenue that come your way. So the next question might be like, well, why, Amanda? We're a startup. We need to bring in money. We need to demonstrate to our investors that we have product market fit. The answer is exactly niching down and not having the FOMO of revenue, or the fear of missing out on revenue, is what is going to allow you to do that. And so the reason I want to take it back to the funnel is that if you have the whole addressable market that you're going after, and I'm going to make it real simple, and you say, okay, hey investors, we need $5 for marketing this year. And the 5 could be 500,000, 5 million, 5 billion, but we'll just say 5 for the sake of the conversation. If your target audience is actually 5 different audiences, that means you've got $1 for each audience. And those dollars, or those individual dollars, are not going to get you very far, because you're going to need different messaging. Going back to voice of client, you're going to have to conduct more voice of client interviews. So the idea is pick one of those audiences, and then you have $5 to spend to better understand that one audience. And so when you go out and you're pitching to your investors, hey, this is how we're going to continue to grow, you're going to know exactly what is my cost of acquiring that one type of audience. What are the channels I need to go to? What is the messaging? So when you niche down at the beginning, it's sort of like the proverbial go slow to go fast. You learn exactly what you need to do, and then you have the foundation for how you can accelerate and ramp up your business.
Yeah, it never makes sense to try to be everything to everybody, right?
No.
And so even in when your clients, I'm sure that they're talking about, oh, here's who our target audience is. Well, there's a broad definition, like a demographic definition of the target audience, but then there's also the persona, right? And
Yep.
Everything that you do, the more people you're trying to market to, the less effective you are going to be to the core, right? And that's when you're talking about this, it's like, what's the core audience? Who are the people that are going to fall in love with this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we bring those people on as our early advocates, right? Especially in a startup environment. I have the similar background with being a fractional CMO for a lot of startup companies, and I started my own company as well. And it's very easy to fall into kind of oh, here's our tech, right? And here's, as soon as anybody finds out about this, they're just going to fall in love with it. The floodgates are going to open, right? And it just doesn't work that way. Right?
Certainly not today. It doesn't. No.
No. And especially where there's so many choices and there's so many decisions to be made, right? So what's interesting is I think a lot of people are probably thinking about FOMO marketing in terms of like the actual marketing that we're creating for the customer. And what you're talking about is the fear of missing out is actually creating much more of a generic go-to-market strategy, right? That isn't going to be.
Yep. It certainly can. And then, it affects not only the go-to-market strategy, but on the back end, how you service those clients. Because hypothetically, if you're niching down by geography, what if you need a field team? Well, if you're saying, look, we're going to go to all of the US or all of the world, that may mean that you have different languages that you need to hire customer service reps for, or you need to be working different hours and you need to have teams that cover different time zones. And so it's not just on the marketing side, but then how you fulfill on whatever product or offering you have. Where that does tie back to marketing is that how do you then take that story to market to those different, in this case, geographies? Because as much as you want your marketing to bring you in the right people, you also want it to help you not bring in the wrong, or to not have you bring in the wrong people. Because if you bring in the wrong people, that usually ends up costing your business more. It dilutes your brand, and you may end up having worse brand perception. Because if someone who if let's say an 80-year-old woman buys shoes for a 13-year-old boy, maybe it's a silly example, they're not going to like the shoes, or vice versa, they're not going to like the shoes, and then they're going to talk poorly about the shoes and your brand, and then you've lost some brand equity, and you're not helping your business, and you're making things more challenging from a marketing perspective. So I get that that was a bit of a silly example, but it's like making sure that you focus on the right audience helps with marketing, but it also helps, all the way through the funnel. And even when it's you're working on, renewing a customer or reselling or having a good customer experience.
What you're talking about, bringing the wrong people in, there's been a lot that's been written about the death of the MQL, right? And there's plenty of B2B organizations now that don't even track MQLs, right? Because entry with a name and an email address for a download does not mean that they're ready for a serious conversation. And what it can do is just flood the sales team with a bunch of wasted time that creates this tension that's already naturally there in the sales and kind of the marketing, the alignment that needs to happen. So it really, by going after everyone, you're almost guaranteed that you're going to be getting a ton of the leads that you do get aren't going to be good. And they're going to waste time. They're going to be inefficient. And then that product market fit that you're talking about, it's going to be that much harder to attain. Your cost of acquisition for leads is going to be harder to attain. It's going to be harder to attain more money in the next round as well. It really impacts the whole thing. So tell me a little bit about